Hey guys, Razorblade Bingo here. So, last week was pretty busy for PlayStation. We got some news that I wanted to talk about regarding Sony Japan Studio, and we got a new State of Play, which I thought was which I'll talk about that later. So, I first want to start off with one of the more iffy, sad points of news that came out last week. So, for quite a few months now, we've been hearing reports that big people at Sony Japan Studios have been leaving. And this includes a lot of the people that worked on, quite a few big people that worked on things like Bloodborne and Gravity Rush and Siren, and they've moved on to other parts of the video game industry, either forming their own studio or going to a different studio. But the common thread is that they are leaving Sony. And we've heard reports that Sony has kind of been really scaling back their involvement with Japanese development because they feel like Japanese culture is way more shifted towards portable gaming, because the Switch has basically got a stranglehold on the market there. Yes, you do have success with certain properties like Final Fantasy and Resident Evil over there, but for the most part, from what the reports have been saying, is that Japan is pretty much a Switch country at this point. So Sony, ever since they relocated their headquarters to California, they have been slowly but surely pulling out resources at Japan Studio and Japanese development overall, to where they could probably focus much more on their Western stuff, because the vast majority of the studios that they own are either in Europe or North America. So, yeah, and Sony basically confirmed it last week that yes, they are definitely scaling back their resources in PlayStation Japan Studio. So I'm reading this from IGN, and they released a statement that said, "In an effort to further strengthen business operations, SIE can confirm PlayStation Studios Japan Studio," that's a mouthful, "will be reorganized into a new organization on April 1st. Japan Studio will be recentered to Team Asobi, the creative team behind Astro's Playroom, allowing the team to focus on a single vision and build on the popularity of Astro's Playroom. In addition, the roles of external production, software localization, and IP management of Japan Studio titles will be concentrated within the global functions of PlayStation Studios." So, the gist of it is that PlayStation Japan Studio, that full title is way too long. Japan Studio is pretty much going to be no more as of April 1st. Or if it, maybe not no more, but it will be a significantly smaller version of what it once was. And I don't think they're fully shutting it down. I think they're just going to be turning it basically into what it's been mostly doing for the past generation, is a support studio. Which, when you look at the roster of games that they have been a support studio for, it's large. It includes things like Bloodborne, the recent Demon Souls remake, Everybody's Golf, adaptations of things like what the Chinese Room did, and it's just a lot of stuff. And that's basically what they're going to be doing from this point on, except focusing more on Team Asobi, the team behind not only the aforementioned Astro's Playroom, but also Astrobot Rescue Mission, which, in my opinion, is the best VR game ever made. So, I have some thoughts on this, obviously. I am of two minds about this, and I've seen reactions run the gamut of, oh, this is not a big deal, they haven't really made anything big in a long time, or right down to, this spells the doom of Sony. Sony is doomed. Sony is dead to me. Sony has officially died, which I think is just a silly reaction to have. I understand the concern, and I'll go over the concerns that I have, because I definitely have a few. But, like I said, I'm of two minds about this. On one hand, I am extremely happy that Sony is going to be putting a lot more resources into Asobi Team, because they are a fantastic studio. They really are. I absolutely adored Astro's Playroom, and I grow more fond of that game as time goes on. And that honestly, when the PlayStation 5 generation is finished, I honestly would not be surprised if that ended up being my favorite game of the entire PS5 generation. I'm dead serious, guys. I love Astro's Playroom. Love it. And my only big gripe with it is that I wish there was more. And I don't mean that in a derogatory sense, like there isn't enough there. Like I said in the review, I felt bad playing this because it was free. I felt like I was robbing Asobi and Sony by not giving them at least $30 for this, because I got so much out of it. And that was a tech demo. Now, if they want to give Asobi resources to make a large-scale, big, open-world collect-a-thon Astro game in the style of something like Super Mario Odyssey, fine. I would say that the restructuring of Sony Japan Studio was worth it just for that, because that's what I want. And I think that is something that realistically could happen because of the popularity of Astro's, not only Astro's Playroom, but Astrobot Rescue Mission too. That Sony is willing to restructure an entire, like their oldest development studio around this relatively new team that's only been around since the beginning of the PlayStation 4 generation. That's crazy. So that goes to show how much power and sway Asobi Team have after this. So I'm excited. I would gladly pay $70 for a full-on Super Mario Odyssey style Astro game. I would just have it go to select different worlds and just let me explore this jungle gym of platforming and collecting, and I would just be bliss. It would just be bliss to play a game like that. I would love it. On the other hand, I am concerned that there is this creeping sense of homogeny with their games, and they're kind of scrubbing away their Japanese roots and identity, which makes me sad. As somebody who grew up, with things like Final Fantasy and Kingdom Hearts and a bunch of other shit, like Japan-related stuff, one of the reasons I gravitated more towards Sony than Xbox is because they focused on the weird. They focused a lot more on the niche Japanese stuff that I like compared to Xbox's kind of... I don't mean to start a fucking fanboy war with this, but when I look at Xbox's lineup, I don't really see much that interests me. But when I look at old PlayStation stuff, there's quite a bit. Ape Escape, Crash Bandicoot, Jak and Daxter, Sly Cooper, a lot of those are American, but there was this sense of idiosyncrasy with those games that I feel like has kind of been lost on Sony these days. And I don't think what Sony is putting out is necessarily bad or mediocre for the most part. I mean, far from it, which another point I'll get to way later in the video, is that I'm going to miss these more weird niche Japanese games. And I feel like Sony, even when they've made them over the past generation or so, they've done a really bad job of marketing them. I feel like they could have put a lot more behind things like Gravity Rush, Concrete Genie, just weird Japanese stuff, a lot more investment in it, rather than just giving up entirely. So I understand the concern for that. I understand the concern that Sony is basically becoming westernized, which I feel like that's kind of been what Sony's been creeping towards over the last few years. So there is that concern from my point of view. I share it to an extent. I'm not sounding the bell of doom for Sony, but I am going to miss the weirder stuff that they focus on. Now, if this means that we get more second-party titles where Sony will go after certain Japanese studios not necessarily to purchase them, but to ask them to make PS5 exclusives, like for them. That's okay. That's whatever. That's something I could see myself, depending on the games, of course, I could see myself being in for, but I am going to miss the more in-house first-party Japanese stuff from them. And I hope this doesn't affect a team like Polyphony Digital. I hope they leave Polyphony Digital alone, because that's another iconic PlayStation studio, because they made Gran Turismo for years. I hope they're not being messed with. So, moving on from that, I want to talk about the last week's State of Play. I don't know what's been going on with Sony's marketing, but the more of these State of Plays that happen, the more I get the sense they aren't really putting their full backing behind their own stuff. And I feel like more and more of these State of Plays are becoming inconsequential. And there is this seriously stark contrast between an average State of Play and that PS5 reveal event back in June. And they're relatively the same in terms of concepts. Like, they show off trailers, they show off gameplay, they have the developers come in and talk in between them or during the gameplay, but their vibes are completely different. The June event, that felt more like a big deal, because we had a large amount of high-profile reveals, we had a large amount of first-party representation from Sony themselves, and there was this really palpable sense of excitement and anticipation for it. I mean, people were really into watching this event. Like, it really felt like an event. But on the other hand, these State of Plays feel so flat and half-hearted, even though quite a few of the games they've shown interest me. Like last week, they had games like Kina, they had Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade, they had something like Sifu, which looks pretty damn good. They have the upcoming Five Nights at Freddy's, which I'm shockingly kind of interested in, because it looks like Outlast. Deathloop, the more I see of it, the more I want it, because I think it looks really good. But all those games are there, but the structure around presenting them is all wrong, or maybe they shouldn't even be there to begin with. They suck at presenting these games. For example, why wasn't Ratchet & Clank at last week's showcase? Why? Why did they instead show stuff we've seen over and over again, like Crash 4, Oddworld Soulstorm, Solar Ash, Deathloop? Why? Why did Sony opt to drop the release date for Rift Apart on a random Tuesday morning in a blog post, instead of saving it for this presentation alongside new gameplay? It just baffles me that they make decisions like this. I don't get it. If there was one game that I bet money on being there last week, it would have been Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, and thankfully I didn't bet any money on that, because I would have lost. I get that there's a pandemic going on. I sympathize with that, and that it severely impacted game development last year. But there has to be something these guys can show from their upcoming PlayStation Studios titles. There has to be. Maybe don't do these State of Plays anymore. Maybe just have them... And part of the problem is expectation versus reality. And even though Sony said in their blog post that, hey, this is mainly going to be focusing on third-party and indie games that were shown at the June reveal event. Fine. Like expectations, they're there, but there's just this sense that Sony really doesn't understand what people want from these kind of events, because everybody is doing these direct events now. Even Nintendo's, I thought Nintendo's was better, the recent one was better than the State of Play last week, but even that one, it felt like there was this sense that they maybe could have waited a little bit longer and had more stuff to show. I feel like that's what happened with Sony last week. Sony kind of just went way too early in presenting stuff, or didn't focus on the right things. And I don't know what else they have in development. I'd like to know what else they have, because by the time we hit the halfway point in the year, there will only be a handful of games that have been announced for the PS5 that will be well known to the public. Like, we've got the rumored things like a new IP from Guerrilla. We've got the things like the secret project from Sony San Diego. We've got things like the Silent Hill. I don't know what the fuck is going on with that, but we need to see something at this point. And at this point, I think Sony should just not do these state of plays anymore and just focus on these large events maybe every 6 months. I think they need to do that. Or if they're going to rebrand the state of play, because when I hear the term state of play, which is obviously, State of the Union, where it talks about the full broad spectrum of what's going on, I feel like state of play is just being misused because we're not being given the full state of what's going on with Sony in these presentations. They drop like games in them, but then they save some big stuff for interviews where news gets buried in that if people don't look at it past the headline, or blog posts, random blog post drops. I don't know what's going on with Sony's marketing, but they need to step up their game because I think they are just dropping the ball as far as what state of play could actually be. I think so far they just have not been doing that great of a job of building these things up as must-watch events. And I miss those because we're not going to get E3 anymore. Not like the way it was before coronavirus. We're not going to get it anymore. And I miss that. And I feel like Sony could be doing a much better job of presenting these as a replacement for E3. Wait until June. Wait until June. Have trailers for your games that are coming out during the first half of the year. No doubt, do that. Definitely don't ignore Ratchet & Clank. Don't ignore Returnal. Don't ignore MLB. But, have those trailers come out. Or maybe not every 6 months, maybe every 4 months. And then you can have things like Ratchet & Clank and Returnal and promote those. And, maybe just have your event in June, whatever, because I'm pretty sure they're going to have some kind of event in June or July. Have it be mainly first-party things and big announcements. I don't want to see a single indie game at these things unless they are big, unless they are like big, something that is guaranteed to turn heads, like Kena Bridge of Spirits. Because some people think that's a PlayStation exclusive, like that's from PlayStation themselves. It's not. That's an indie game. And that turned a lot of heads when that premiered last year during the June event. Have games like that. Have games that you absolutely know for sure are going to make a giant impact on your audience. Don't do this thing where you're throwing out Oddworld for the billionth time. You're throwing out Solar Ash for the billionth time. Seeing Deathloop for the billionth time. Like, it doesn't... Crash 4, I don't know why that was there when they released a blog post for it earlier in the week. I don't get it. I'm just saying, guys, just have a state of play focused on just first-party stuff. These guys need to do better at getting people interested in getting a PS5. Because so far, I'm not seeing a whole lot of reasons to get a PS5, if I'm being honest. Aside from Astro's Playroom. That's the best thing. And Demon's Souls Remake, of course. Because now that Horizon's going to be a fucking PS4 game, and God of War, they're staying really quiet on whether that's going to be cross-gen, which I have a feeling that's going to be cross-gen as well. There really aren't a whole lot of reasons to buy a PS5. Like, I feel like Ratchet & Clank is going to be the first big thing for a lot of people. I don't know, like, do better, guys. Come on. With these state of plays. Hire me. Fuck, I'll tell you what to do. Just take this video and use this as a template to what to do for the next state of play. You'll do great. Bunch of first-party announcements. Boom, God of War. Boom, Horizon. Boom, Gran Turismo. Boom, secret Sony San Diego studio game. Boom, new Guerrilla Games IP. Boom, Factions multiplayer for Last of Us. Boom, new big platformer. I don't know, something. Boom, boom, boom. Just drop bombs, guys. Come on, show me something. Show me something that's gonna make me be like, yes, this is why I'm happy to own a PS5. Come on, do better, okay? So, one final thing before I go. I've seen a lot of people ever since the news dropped that Sony was restructuring Japan studio, that there's this talk this opinion floating around that they are becoming companies like EA and Ubisoft. And I think that's bullshit. I think that is a silly ass opinion to have. And this isn't me excusing Sony's behavior. with some of the things they've pulled, because they can be really scummy dickbags at times. Like, just look at the recent shit they've been doing with MLB The Show 21, where they've got the $70 price tag with the special edition, with the next gen version only, plus microtransactions, plus loot boxes, plus an $85 deluxe edition. It's outrageous with that. But they haven't come close to being just dirtbags, just the scum of the earth that Ubisoft and Activision and EA are nowadays. They're not even in that same league as those people, those companies. So I stop. Just stop saying that. Just stop saying they're becoming the new EA and Ubisoft. Just no, they're not. No, they're not. I don't care how westernized they get. That's not happening. Okay. And despite how you may feel about Jim Ryan, and I definitely have some pretty strong negative opinions about Jim Ryan for the last few years, but Sony's not becoming the new EA. They're not becoming the new Ubisoft. So far during this PS5 generation, I don't see any evidence to support that whatsoever. And as far as fear of variety, where I've seen this opinion float around too, that Sony is all they're going to be doing now are third-person cinematic open-world action games, and I don't see any evidence that that's the case either, because so far during the PS5 generation, they've had a pretty nice variety of stuff. I don't see any evidence that supports the opinion that all Sony makes nowadays are cinematic open-world action games. Like, that's objectively not true. Out of the 11 games they have released or announced for the PS5, there are only maybe 2 that fit that description. Miles Morales and Horizon Forbidden West. Hell, I'll even throw in God of War 2, because that could be more open world for all I know. I don't think it will be, but I will throw in God of War 2. So that's 3. 3 out of the 11. That still leaves 8 games that don't fit that category. You've got things like platformers, like Sackboy and Astro's Playroom. You've got third-person shooter roguelikes like Returnal. You got a sports game in MLB The Show. You got a racing game with Gran Turismo 7. You've got, I didn't like it, but you got vehicular combat with Destruction All-Stars. You've got a action RPG that is a remake of one of the more challenging games of the PS3 generation in Demon's Souls remake. So there is variety there, guys. There's no need to panic that Sony is all they're going to make are the cinematic action games. They'll continue to make them because they're critical darlings and they sell very well, but there is no evidence that they're becoming the factory of open world cinematic action games. That's not happening. I don't see that happening. And even during the PS4 generation, when they really started to solidify that their niche are these like lavishly produced single player action games. Even during the PS4 generation, they had a large variety of things. So I feel like with the PS5 generation, even with this restructuring of Sony Japan, it's just going to be more of the same from the PS4 generation, which is fine with me, because the PS4 generation I think is like one of their strongest in terms of first party. Easily one of their best. I think second only to the PlayStation 2 generation. Sony was on fire the last generation with first-party games and second-party games. And so far, from what I've seen, aside from Destruction All-Stars being crap, all 4 games that they released for their launch for the PS5 were either very good or excellent. So, don't sound the doom bell yet, guys. Just wait. Just wait a few years. Then we will evaluate if Sony is becoming more homogenized, if they are becoming more westernized, if they are turning into the Ubisoft factory where they're cranking out open world game after game after game. Just stop, calm down, drink some water, just relax. Just look at what they've presented so far and what they're going to be releasing soon. We're all right for now. So anyway, that's all I wanted to talk about today. thank you guys so much for watching. If you like to see, subscribe. Let me know what you think of all this Sony stuff. And as always, I am Razorblade Mango. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you all later. See ya!